Hello, everyone. Thank you again for joining us today. My name is Jesse Richard, and on behalf of Everbridge, I'm excited to present this webinar with CloudfloorDNS, DDoS attacks, mitigation and response techniques to minimize downtime. During this event, our two speakers will discuss what DDoS attacks are, the different types of attacks, how to prepare your infrastructure for such an attack, and what to do when an attack happens. After the presentations, we'll have a short Q&A with the speakers. And just as a reminder, the recording of the webinar and slides will be sent out to all registrants at the end of this week. We encourage everyone to participate and ask questions during the webinar. You can submit your questions by typing in the questions widget and submitting to all panelists. We'll also be live tweeting and taking questions on Twitter during the event using the hashtag #ITAWebinar. And now, I'd like to introduce you to our speakers. Eric McIntyre is the Senior Director of DNS Business and Development at CloudfloorDNS, with focus on enterprise DNS sales and marketing. He has over 22 years of experience in the domain and DNS industry and has worn many hats as co-founder of tzio.com, a managed DNS business that he sold to DYN in 2012. He started his career doing tech support for a small software company and has also held several positions at Lotus Development back in the early 90s. Eric holds a Bachelor of Business Administration from Plymouth State College and enjoys tinkering with a Z-Wave automation home and enjoys live music, snowmobiling, and water skiing in his time off. After Eric, we'll hear from Vincent Jeffrey. Vincent is the Senior Director of Product Marketing here at Everbridge with a focus of IT alerting and communications and IoT. He has over 14 years of experience in the information technology business, designing, promoting, and selling enterprise IT operations management solutions, including critical communications, application performance management, and IT process and workload automation. And without further ado, I would like to pass it over to our first speaker, Eric.
Hello, everybody, and thank you, Jesse and Vincent, for having me here today. As Jesse stated earlier, my name is Eric McIntyre, and I'm the Senior Director of DNS Business Development for CloudfloorDNS. Cloudfloor is a managed DNS service provider and offering Anycast and advanced DNS services such as failover, geographic DNS, as well as DNS load balancing to organizations of all sizes across the globe. We focus on DNS as a core and help add reliability, flexibility, and speed to your online presence. DNS is a critical infrastructure technology and acts as a directory assistance for the internet. Every web page, graphic, and online transaction on the internet goes through DNS, and if DNS goes down, then your online digital business goes with it. Today's online environment is extremely competitive, and it's critical that your online website and other online services respond as fast as possible and with the utmost in reliability. So we're going to cover DDoS attacks, and our first step is to learn what a DDoS attack is. Essentially, a DDoS attack is a threat to your online digital business, and it stands for Distributed Denial of Service. And DDoS attacks are designed to cripple or take down online services to effectively stop you from serving your legitimate customers. DDoS attacks can be launched in a variety of ways, and there can be multiple attacks that can hit you at the same time, different types of attacks. And essentially, a DDoS attack damages your ability to serve your legitimate customers. It damages your ability to sell online, provide information to potential new customers, and effectively does severe damage to your brand. It's a known fact that DDoS attacks are growing. And year over year, there's been many increases in the number of attacks as well as the size of the attacks and size of data. There's some stats here from VeriSign and Akamai, two very respected sources. And overall, 64% of companies saw 2+ types of attacks when under attack, and 32% saw one type of attack. They're definitely growing in size as far as data size, and the average size in Q1 2016 was just under 20 gigabits a second from 14 or so the year before. And 41% of the attacks on these companies were over 10 gigabits a second. And obviously the 182% increase shows that they are growing quarter over quarter since Q2 of 2015. Akamai has also seen similar increases in attacks, and they've seen 125% plus increase in attacks in the last year from Q1 2015 to Q1 2016. And overall, 137% increase in attacks over 100 gigabits a second, which is a tremendous amount of data. And there's also been a strong increase in the duration and how long these attacks last. So there's been an 8% increase in the last year, and attacks have gone up from around 14 hours to just over 16 hours. So why do DDoS attacks happen? Well, it could be a number of different reasons, but primarily it's one of these four reasons. And the number one reason is you're a target, and your business becomes a specific target, whether it be the result of a disgruntled employee, a disgruntled customer, or possibly a ransom attempt, or even a social injustice by your company, and maybe you're making headlines in the news for the wrong reasons. Someone just might not like you and want to attack you. And it also could be the vertical market that you choose to operate in. Certain vertical markets are more prone to attack than others, such as porn and gambling, as well as there's a high concentration of attacks in the IT, SaaS, and cloud industries, financial sector, entertainment sector, as well as the public sector. And you all probably remember the attack that happened on Sony Pictures in the entertainment sector. That was a pretty large attack. It could also be just simple bad luck. And your organization could be hosted on a DNS provider or a web service provider or other cloud service provider that happens to share resources with somebody under attack. And obviously, if you're sharing resources with them, your site will be degraded as well in your operations. And it also could be a diversion attempt. And attackers will send a DDoS attack to your organization, and that's done in order to distract the network and security personnel while they're attacking your other resources online. So we'll go over what happens during an attack. And currently, it depends on the type of attack. For the majority, your website, your email, APIs, and other SaaS services that you operate and other online services can be completely degraded, slowed down, or offline 100%. Online ordering and other customer-facing apps may also go offline or become severely degraded. And as we saw before from Akamai, attacks can last from minutes up to many, many hours and possibly even weeks. There are many factors involved in the type of attack and how long it will last, as well as the motivation by the attacker. And the key thought is you can't prevent an attack. There is no one service you can buy to stop you from getting attacked. It just simply does not exist. But there are steps you can take. And the first step is definitely being prepared with a plan before you get attacked. So we're going to go over a few different types of DDoS attacks, and we'll start out with volumetric attacks. Volumetric attacks are typically the easiest and lowest cost to run, and someone with a stolen credit card could go on the internet into the underground world of the internet and actually purchase a volumetric attack or a DDoS attack and simply launch that in a matter of minutes. And these attacks are typically launched with UDP, which is a stateless protocol and doesn't require authenticity of the source IP that it's coming from and can just kind of be blasted out. So typically these volumetric attacks are done with the UDP protocol, and they often involve ICMP or ping floods, which sends a large amount of traffic and data flooding your pipes or your internet connectivity and consuming the bandwidth within that pipe at that location. Application level attacks typically target specific applications and or ports. And it could be a web application that you might be running or an API over port 80, and they might attack the web port and cause that protocol to go down. They're a little bit more expensive, and they typically require a little bit more effort. Amplification attacks are very common on services such as DNS, NTP, SSDP, and other common protocols. And these attacks are designed where a small query that typically resides on the internet for, let's say, looking up DNS can result in a much bigger response from the server that they're attacking, clogging resources, slowing down hardware, and of course clogging the pipe as well. And then there's state of exhaustion attacks or protocol attacks. And these attacks take advantage of flaws in protocols. And everybody probably remembers the old ping of death, which happened a few years ago, which caused a buffer overload and caused hardware to slow down and the protocol to fail based on reassembling of the packets at the target server. These large packets would then cause a buffer overflow. So here's an example of an amplification attack. And as I alluded to before, the amplification attacks tend to be more common, and attacking DNS is one very common type of amplification. And this also uses the UDP protocol, and what it does is it takes the attacker actually will send a typical DNS request through the pipe to a server, and when that server responds back, it actually sends back data up to 100 times in size, and in this case, this is 100x amplification. So there's a 40-byte DNS request sent from the attacker, and the DNS server then responds back with a 4K return, and this is based on the AnyType for DNSSEC type zone records. And thus, what this does is as you can see, there's 100 times greater response than the initial request, and then that response gets sent to a spoofed IP, which the attacker basically fakes the IP, and the data is just meant to be useless data. When you combine this amplification attack using a botnet, which is a large distributed gathering of compromised systems, and these are typically controlled by hackers and available for rent. And typically the botnet can be rented out and pointed at a specific target, and then sent this same large 100x amplified request thousands and thousands of times per second over and over at thousands of different locations. It's very difficult to thwart this type of attack without the proper DDoS mitigation in place. So here's an example of an amplification attack. And this amplification attack is an amplified reflective attack. And instead of the source IP that it's coming from, which it be fake, it actually, the source IP is spoofed to a target web server that they want to take down. So this botnet will automatically send the request to the server, and then the server will respond back, the DNS server, and send all its responses back to the target web server or your web server that may be under attack, clogging the resources and taking that server down, or slowly, or taking it down where it's severely degraded. So as you can see, it's extremely important to protect yourself against DDoS attacks. Not only are service outages very costly, the loss of sales can cost you thousands of dollars per hour or more. Just imagine Amazon.com being down for a day. Millions and millions of lost revenue can happen due to this. It's also not only lost sales, but it's also loss of customers and the opportunity to get new customer acquisition. It's extremely expensive to gain new customers, and having your website be offline or extremely slow can be just as bad as being offline. Consumers today are very ever-growing impatient, and if typically 100 millisecond delay can reduce sales significantly. So it's important that you're fast and up. And of course, there's collateral damage to your brand as well as your brand reputation. So now we'll talk about what to do during a DDoS attack. And as I alluded to before, having a disaster recovery and disaster prevention plan in place before you get attacked is critical. There's just not enough time to come up with this plan while you're under attack, and it's going to cause the time to fix this, and just to simply extend that, causing you a much greater loss in revenue and lost sales. So the first thing you want to do is identify the type of attack, the volume and methods of the attack. And this is known as the mean time to identify. The faster you know, the faster you can fix. So it's very important that you understand the type of attack, the locations where it's being attacked, the servers, as well as the size of the attack in gigabits per second. It's also extremely critical that you communicate during this attack, and you want to communicate both internally and externally. Internal communications, obviously you want your support and network engineers on that list, as well as support to help reduce the amount of help desk calls coming in. And also you want to inform your sales and your marketing teams for outbound communications. And you also want to communicate externally to customers directly, and also have a constant communication with your network providers. And this will help you identify the volume of attacks and where they're coming in. And you can also use your social networks if your email is compromised due to this or not working because of this attack. You obviously also want to activate your mitigation plan. Once you know about the type of attack, the volume, etc., you activate your mitigation plan, and this is based on the attack vectors. And you also, in this case, being a DNS provider, we would simply route, make adjustments to our BGP routing, would also be actively scrubbing traffic with DDoS mitigation at our hosting locations, and would also be rerouting some DNS pools based on what customer bases and DNS pools are being attacked. And then, of course, once the attack is mitigated or over, you want to announce confirmation of the mitigation success, both internally and externally, and you also want to report the DDoS attack to the proper authorities. So there's really, as I said before, there's really no cure-all or God service, so to speak, to block DDoS attacks. But DNS and managed DNS can definitely help you get through an attack better than without. So DNS, as I alluded to before, is a core part of your critical infrastructure, and every transaction goes through DNS. So it's important that DNS is up and operating fast. And having your DNS on a managed DNS provider with a global Anycast network that focuses strictly on providing rock-solid, fast DNS is critical. Other recommendations are to use a secondary DNS or even a tertiary DNS provider. So you don't just have to have one provider, you can have multiple providers, and what this does is simply, it extends the reach of DNS. So if one DNS provider gets attacked, let's say your primary provider, your secondary or even your tertiary DNS providers will still be up and running. It's very unlikely that all of them would get attacked at the same time. It's also important that you can use DNS servers, DNS hosts that host your domain, and having those DNS servers spread across multiple TLDs. Somebody like Amazon does this, and although it's very unlikely that a TLD will get attacked or compromised, having your DNS across multiple TLDs will help protect you, just in case .com and .net do get hit with an attack and causes them to go down. You'll still be up and operating on .biz, .info, or .co.uk. All run by different organizations, so there's not one organization overseeing all these TLDs. And then, of course, to use a DNS service or managed DNS service provider that actually has DDoS mitigation in place. There are many DNS providers in the world that may or may not have DDoS mitigation. And this mitigation can be an always-on, 24/7 mitigation, or it can be an on-demand. Both of them are definitely a step ahead of not having mitigation service. And then the last piece of advice is to avoid free DNS services or your registrar's DNS, and somebody that, like a website DNS, a web hosting DNS. And the reason for this is because, number one, there's a lot of other companies on this that can get attacked, but these companies typically don't spend their core resources on DNS. They spend their core resources on the website hosting, and DNS is just a needed service that they have to have, but don't necessarily focus on that. All right? And here's how CloudfloorDNS can help. So Cloudfloor has a global Anycast network with 13 locations, and we're adding more all the time. And we currently do work with our hosting locations on mitigation plan and have DDoS mitigation in place. And that helps us identify what is the good traffic coming into our network and the bad traffic, and we can thwart that traffic at the edge. We also offer DNS pooling, which is a method to help spread the risk out when it comes to your DNS getting attacked. So in this case, let's say pool 325, there could be high-risk DDoS customers on this particular pool, or we can also take this pool and move that or null route this particular pool if it's getting attacked, and it'll minimize the amount of customers on our platform that get affected by this. We also offer TLD spread on our DNS service. So your servers are hosted on our enterprise service across the .com, .biz, .info, and .uk TLDs for added reliability and resiliency. And then, of course, we're constantly monitoring our network. And we use tools such as Nagios, AlertSite, Thousand Eyes, Netmon, and others for performance. So it's important that you have a mix of both internal and external routing, external monitoring tools to really get a good idea and a handle on your network to make sure that you're identified immediately when there's any lack of performance or downtime. And then, of course, our network engineers are always constantly adjusting BGP announcements and routing traffic to get the utmost in performance for your business. And then one last piece of advice is if all network operators implemented what's known as BCP 38, it would virtually eliminate UDP IP spoofing. And what this BCP 38 is it's a technology that is operated at network providers. And it simply validates the IP coming out of that network to make sure that that network actually owns that IP range or that source. And what this would do is eliminate the spoofing of IPs as they come out of the network. The network simply looks at the IP and says, this doesn't belong on my island, I'm not going to let it out. It's almost like a firewall outbound for networks. And it's something that this would definitely eliminate a lot of the DDoS UDP spoofing, which causes a lot of the attacks. And now I'm going to hand it over to Vincent from Everbridge.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you. That was a great presentation. And just to remind everybody, if you have any questions for Eric about DNS and mitigations and prevention plans, feel free to ask questions, as we'll have a Q&A session at the end of this webinar. So again, there was a lot of great content. I think it was clear and crisp about the different types of DDoS attacks, the damage it can generate to your IT environment, but also to your business. We learned some of the best practices to limit the impact of those attacks on your web operations. And what I'd like to do now is talk about a little bit about the business consequences of those DDoS attacks, and more generally caused by cyber attacks, and see what we can do, what you can do to minimize the impact on the business, and therefore to minimize the downtime caused by those DDoS attacks. So again, good afternoon or good morning. My name is Vincent Jeffrey, Senior Director of Product Marketing here at Everbridge. And I'd like to start this conversation, this presentation, with a few numbers, few metrics, few data points that I'd like to share with you. So in Eric's presentation, we've learned that it's very difficult to prevent any DDoS attack, and we just need to be ready for that to happen, right? And one of the first fact that I want to highlight here is that a successful DDoS attack will take your business operations down. It will hurt your web applications and make your web services, web application unusable for your consumers. We've seen that DDoS attacks can range from a few hours to a couple of days, but we know and we've seen cyber attacks lasting for weeks and months And I'll share a story with you in a few moments. We also know by experience that the cyber attack is not only an an attack on IT that's going to last for a few hours. The collateral damage can last for much longer, especially if those attacks lead to data leaks or data breach. So again, a cyber attack, a DDoS attack, should be considered as a major IT incident. It's just a different nature. And there's something very specific about cyber attack when they occur, is that it's not just like when we have an issue with a hardware or an IT component that is failing. With a cyber attack, the damage can be much greater. The scope of contamination, of infection, can be much bigger. Your backup systems can be infected. Your data can be infected. That means your recovery plan should be also updated to take this into consideration, because your response time objectives may be altered because of the cyber attack, and due to the fact that your production and even your backups may also be compromised or infected. So having said that, let's look at how organizations today are concerned about cyber crime or cyber attacks. And in a recent Price and Waterhouse-Cooper study, we learned that 32% of large organizations have already been affected by cyber attacks. We also learned that 34% of organizations say that they think they will be attacked in the next 24 months. But what's very interesting here is that only 37% of organizations say that they have a plan in place in case those cyber attacks strike, which is very concerning, because it looks like organizations are aware this can happen anytime, but in terms of putting together a response plan, we see that it's almost only 1/3 of those organizations that are there yet. In terms of CEOs and executives, as you can see, this study shows us that more than 60% of CEOs are concerned about cybersecurity, but in reality, when you look at what's happening, in fact, less than half of board members are inquiring about the response plan that the organization has put in place. So very interesting findings, which shows that we are still, the IT department and IT security in general, we're still new to cyber crime, and we are still working on putting together the right plans. And to illustrate what can happen when a cyber attack strikes, I like to take this story, because it's most likely that you've all heard about what happened at Sony Pictures Entertainment, and that was the day before Thanksgiving in 2014. They were actually, they've been attacked by a group of hackers called the Guardians of Peace, and that was, like I said, right before Thanksgiving in 2014. And what happened is Sony Pictures employees, they would get to the office on that day and would see messages from the hackers directly on their computers. And very soon after that, the personal information of tens of thousands of current workers, but also former workers of the company, was dumped online. So it was available online, including data, including the social security numbers, including the personal contact information, salaries of employees, but also emails, even emails from executives. So sometimes very embarrassing for the company. So the point here is Sony had a pretty robust IT organization. They had tools in place, they had solutions in place, but like the CEO admitted, that didn't have a plan. They were not ready for such an attack. And what happened there is at the very early beginning of the attack, they were the workers, the IT workers, were very confused and very challenged when communicating with employees, but also anyone in the company. Again, emails were compromised, the systems were compromised, and there was no really plan defined. So what the point I'm trying to make here is that when we hear these kind of stories, most of the time we say, "Oh yeah, great, that's this is not an easy situation, and we should be ready to react to that." So we see those stories like, "Oh, it's a lesson learned for us." But when it happens to you or to your organization, it is going to be a disaster. So again, be ready for these kind of attacks. And the reason why I say be ready is if you look at the 2016 Ponemon Institute report on the root causes of an unplanned outage, you'll see that cybercrime has become the #2 reason for unplanned outages. So and look at the progression between 2010 and 2016, it went from being responsible for 2% of the unplanned outages to now more than 20%. So this is becoming a real issue for IT organizations. So Eric talked about the technical aspect of the DDoS attacks, how they happened, what type of DDoS attacks existed, the type of prevention that could be done, the type of mitigation that could be done. Now, what I'd like to talk about is also what's happening behind the screen. Behind the screen, we have customers, we have users, we have consumers of the IT service. And when your IT is under attack, that means your customers are also feeling the damage because they cannot access your web applications, they cannot buy products or services from you, and they're just getting frustrated. And on the other side, inside the company, your service desk is going to start seeing a spike in the number of inbound calls into the service desk as customers and impacted users are going to start wondering what's going on. At the same time, we're going to try to mobilize or engage the IT security team, the IT team, the business continuity team to figure out, one, what is the origin of the issue that we're seeing, what are going to be the resolution plans, and what's going to be the communication plans. How are we going to communicate with the people working on the issue, management, and executives, and also customers to let them know that, yes, there's an issue, IT is working on the issue, and we'll let them know when the service is restored. So again, a business impact here can be disastrous for a company in terms of revenue. We may be losing revenue because we cannot sell our products or services online. It's going to impact our business if the internal application is not available, so the workers cannot do their job. So employee productivity is going to be impacted. If it lasts for a certain time, if it makes the headlines, or if the news is available or spread on social networks, it can hurt the company's image and the brand image. Again, like Eric explained earlier, if the website, if it's a e-commerce website selling products or services, if it's too slow, customers are just going to go buy products and services from the competition, right? So customer retention can be at risk, or customer loyalty can also be at risk. And if the cyber attack leads to a data breach, a data leak, there may be legal consequences for the company. So again, a cyber attack, DDoS attack, leading to slowing down or taking down your business operation is a business issue. And if it's a business issue, there's a cost. There is a cost associated with the business issue. And the same Ponemon Institute study or report I was referring to earlier gives us here some very important and useful numbers. It shows that in 2016, the average cost of an IT downtime is now around $8,000 per minute. And of course, this number may vary from industry to industry, from businesses to businesses. But on average, we're talking $8,000 per minute, which means with everything we're going to be doing, from the detection of a DDoS attack, from the detection of a cyber attack, to the identification through the root cause analysis, through the putting together the restoration plan, fixing and deploying the fix into production, and testing and validating that everything is now back up and running again, every minute is going to count. And for every minute that goes by, we are going to, on average, business is going to lose $8,000 per minute. So, what can we do? What should we do to reduce the time it takes to fix an issue, and therefore reduce the downtime, and reduce the impact on the business, on customers? So the first thing we want to do, and it's a no-brainer, and Eric already talked about this, is, unlike at Sony Pictures, have a plan in place. We need to put a plan in place prior to being attacked. It's like what we do for fire. If there's a fire in the building, everybody knows here how to evacuate the building. It should be the same for when we are dealing with DDoS or cyber attack. So ensure you've got a plan, prevention plan, so a plan to prevent DDoS attacks to occur, but also, since we cannot prevent them from happening, have an incident response plan that you're going to execute as soon as it's been proven that we are being attacked. And also, Eric mentioned the communication, how the communication plan was critical when dealing with those attacks. Have a communication plan defined. Something that you should consider: have your cyber attack response strategy part of your overall business continuity and disaster recovery plan. And what's very important is it shouldn't only live on a paper or in a document. You should train your teams on how to respond to DDoS attacks, but also cyber attacks. And remember one thing: failing to prepare is going to be preparing to fail. No plan means you don't know what to do when something of this nature happens. Two, the second recommendation I like to make today: identify if you already have some incident response team defined. If not, establish a crisis response team. It will include people or members from your business continuity management team, from your IT incident management team, and from your IT security team as well. It will also require technical support resources from your network engineering, from application support, database support, middleware, and so on and so forth, including your electrical medical record system if you are if your IT department is in healthcare and if you are running operations for a hospital. It should also include a IT security manager, a service desk manager who's going to have to communicate and answer all the questions that impacted users are going to have. A customer service manager who's going to communicate with the customers, change manager, to talk about, decide, and put in place the change management request. An IT service director should also be part of the team. And don't forget your third-party vendors. When this happens, you may need to reach out to your DNS provider, to your web hosting provider. And very important, especially when we are under, or you are under a cyber attack, corporate communication. That may include legal and marketing, and we'll see later on how those stakeholders will be important in dealing with the issue. And with every incident, you should assign a major incident manager to coordinate the resources, to coordinate the work and the communication. This is the second recommendation. Now, recommendation number 3. Identify your contacts and your stakeholders. Identify the people who you're going to have to involve while dealing with the cyber attack or the DDoS attacks. But this example here, which I like to take, is the cyber attack. What you see here is a timeline where, at 2:20 in the morning, your IT environment is being attacked. There's an intrusion, and hackers are now on your systems. The IT security team may be involved early on, which they're going to contact or engage the critical incident response team. In this example, that could also be your cyber crisis team. If cyber attack is proven, your executive team may have to be informed. So same way for your legal team, if there's a data breach or data leak, marketing should be at this point involved, because they're going to have to be working maybe on a press release, global press release, to explain what happened. Customer service needs to be kept in the loop, because they're going to have to answer questions of the thousands and thousands of calls they're going to receive into the service desk inquiring about the issue. Your employees, you may also want to be able to communicate with all your employees. For instance, if the internal network is compromised, you may want to let your employees know that they shouldn't log on. They shouldn't come to the office and plug their computers into the internal network. And customer communication is going to be very important, especially if your customers rely on the availability of your web services and web applications. So again, try to think about who should be involved in terms of communication, and identify the contacts and stakeholders. And the number 4 recommendation I have for you today is, and that's maybe the most critical item on my list here, is create communication strategy. Have a communication plan, which will define and explain who will be contacted during the DDoS attack, during the cyber attack. What experts will be needed, from what team? Will senior management be involved? If so, what teams, what managers, who are the managers that will be contacted? Impacted customers, are you going to communicate with your customers, yes or no? If so, how do you want to do that? So who are the customers that you want to communicate with? What communication system are you going to use to communicate with the different groups of people? If you're under a cyber attack, just like the Sony Pictures story, they couldn't use their internal communication system. They couldn't use their telephony network. They couldn't use emails because emails were compromised. So do you need, or are you going to be using a off-net system? Do you need encryption? Do you need encrypted communication for your IT team, for your executives, when they are assessing the business damages and have to take actions? So these are some of the questions that you need to ask. How are you going to keep the contact information of everybody up to date? So if you need to reach out to your chief marketing officer at 2 in the morning, where do you keep this information? Where do you keep his cell phone number and all the personal information? Again, remember, your internal system may be compromised, so you don't want to give hackers access to this information either. So how are you going to keep it up to date? Where are you going to store this information? Now, in terms of communication, how are you going to communicate with the different group of people? Emails, we know that emails don't even wake up anybody at night. So if you need to reach out to people in the middle of the night, emails may not be the best option. Plus, if your emails are compromised, you don't want hackers to have access to your communications. Text, SMS, voice, text to voice, same thing. If it's a cyber attack, how do you make sure that your telephony network is safe? If it's a DDoS attack, I guess it's totally fine to use your internal phone system. So questions you need to ask, or do we want a mobile application and send push notifications to people through a secure channel? Now, what type of content will be communicated and to whom? Again, in the middle of the crisis, there is no time for crafting a message to stakeholders, to management, to customers, or to the IT team. It should be predefined so that when something bad happens, you just execute the plan, but everything has already been predefined. It's just a matter of filling out a few information and it's ready to go. What is going to be the escalation process if the IT staff that should be responding to the attack are not responding quickly enough? I can't reach out to my DNS experts. What happens? What's the escalation process? And how often are we going to be communicating with the different groups of people, customers, stakeholders, but also the IT team? So again, something we need to remember is we have to be prepared for all sorts of situations. And remember the Sony Pictures story, their telephony system was also compromised and they couldn't use emails. And my recommendation number 5 is going to be about making sure that your IT security expert and your IT expert and your business continuity people can work together, can collaborate together. So you will need to make available at least 2 conference bridges. I say at least 2 because in most of cyber attack situations, you're going to need 3 or 4 different conference bridges. You want to have one dedicated to your IT technical staff. You want to have at least one for senior management, and so they can share business updates. Best practice here, don't mix both together on the same conference bridge. You don't want your technical resources to be distracted by business questions. So at least 2 conference bridges. Now, again, do we need secure conference bridges in case the telephony network is compromised? That's a question that we need to ask. How are we going to be contacting the stakeholders? Again, can we use our internal communication channels, or do we need an off-net or secure and encrypted communication? When it comes to contacting the IT staff and IT experts, how are we going to do that? Are we going to call manually each and every one that is on call, or is it going to be a manual process, calling one after the other, or is it something that you want to plug into your ticketing system? So from your ticketing system, you can automatically reach out and call or send SMS to all your IT experts, or from your monitoring tools. So these are all questions that in a perfect world, will already be answered, and you have all the documents, all the plans ready to go, and again, you have an answer for all those questions. But if not, my recommendation would be to start a project sooner rather than later to define your communication plan. And as a summary, we've learned that DDoS attacks cannot be avoided and will take your operations down. It can be disastrous to the brand image, to the revenue of the company, and when those attacks, and so cyber attacks or DDoS attacks happen, you need to react quickly and make sure that you engage the right resources to reduce the downtime, to reduce the impact on customers and business. You need to have a plan. Having a plan means it's going to be much faster to execute the different steps. And having a plan means also that with the automation that's included in the plan, it's going to be much easier to deal with the pressure that we all feel when in the middle of a crisis. Define a cyber crisis response team, or use your critical incident response team that you have today. You want to know who you will communicate with during the attack. You need to know who's on call and who's responsible for what at all times. So get on-call schedule and rotation and shift information. Know how to escalate if people don't answer. Have the communication workflows already defined, and again, give your IT staff and your management conference bridges and virtual rooms so they can work on the issue. And with that, I'm going to thank you all, reminding you that this is what we do at Everbridge on a daily basis. We help our customers put together communication workflows and automation in order to limit the impact on their business and on their customers. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Jesse to see if we have any questions. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Eric and Vincent. Great session. So we do have a few questions coming up. Once again, as a reminder to everyone, if you do have any questions for either Eric or Vincent, you can enter them in the questions panel of your GoToWebinar widget. So the first one that comes up, I think it's pointed towards Eric, and is, what exactly is a tertiary DNS provider?
Sure, I'd be happy to answer that. A tertiary provider is actually a third provider. So a primary DNS provider would be somebody, let's say, such as VeriSign or CloudfloorDNS or a company like NS1. And adding a secondary provider, you could, let's say you were with VeriSign as your primary DNS, you could add CloudfloorDNS as your secondary provider. And a tertiary provider is just simply a third provider serving up DNS for you. And all that does is give you added resiliency and make sure that if so happens that VeriSign got attacked and was degraded, or Cloudfloor got attacked and degraded, that at least somebody was up and offering DNS for you, because again, DNS is such a critical component of your internet presence.
Great. Second question coming in also for you, Eric, is what is an Anycast network?
Yeah, I'd be more than happy to answer that. Anycast is a protocol that really allows the same IP of multiple DNS servers to be served from multiple locations. And really, it's in a network addressing and routing methodology where requests from a sender or a requester are sent to the nearest DNS node. Basically, what it does is it just provides a faster, more resilient DNS network than the unicast, which is a single IP in a single location. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I guess there's another question that just came in about reverse DNS and whether Cloudfloor allows reverse DNS. Yes, we do, and those are called PTR records, and it's definitely what you need to do is in order to do reverse DNS, you have to have that IP delegated by your provider locally. So whoever is actually assigning that, they would do that, but we do support reverse DNS.
Great. And another question that comes in is, how does one go about reporting a DDoS attack, and are they worth reporting?
Yeah, although it's very difficult to find out the source of attack, primarily with UDP spoofing and IP spoofing, it is worthwhile to report the attack. There are several authorities to report. You can report to ICANN, which is the Consortium for Assigned Names and Numbers, but we definitely recommend that you report to the FBI. And there's a response team at the FBI that's designed specifically to take computer threats and DDoS attacks, report it to them, and they will get back in touch with you and ask you for more details on the attack.
Great. Another question coming in is, how do you know when it's a DDoS attack? Where do you start?
Well, the first thing you want to do is, obviously you want to look at your network and contact your network providers, such as your DNS providers. You want to contact your hosting providers and have a look at the network and the network traffic. They can dive into that traffic and examine that and determine whether it's good or possibly bad traffic and help you identify where the attack is actually hitting. And so that's definitely the first step. And they will help you mitigate that attack depending on who's attacked, etc.
Great. And I have another question coming in. How will business teams know the difference between an internal IT issue versus a cyber incident?
I think that's you, Vincent.
So the question is about how do you know it's a cyber attack or a DDoS attack versus an IT issue. Like we said, it's very difficult to prevent a DDoS attack, and most of the time they're going to look like just regular traffic on your website, right? And so what you're going to see, you're going to start seeing your web application having some performance issues. So the question is then to do a quick assessment of the situation to see if the performance issue or the availability issue of the website or the web application is due to heavy traffic and DNS request, or is due to maybe an application issue, a Java issue, a JavaScript error on the website, a component of the application. So again, there's no, correct me if I'm wrong, Eric, but there's no easy way but to run some kind of investigation to really make sure that you're under a DDoS attack.
Correct.
Great, thank you, Vincent, and thank you, Eric. Unfortunately, we are out of time now, so I just want to, thank everyone who could join us today, and once again, Eric, for your great presentation, and Vincent on DDoS attacks and responding to them. If anyone has any remaining questions, feel free to reach out to Eric or us on Twitter, and we will be sending out and sharing the slides as well as the recording at the end of this week. So thank you again, everyone, for joining, and we hope to see you at our next webinar.
Thank you.